Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today, we have a very special guest on the show. So I'm really excited to be joined by a good friend of mine. Now, Liz, you're my friend, just letting everyone know, right?
Oh, yeah.
Liz
My
Ryan,
little brother, Chris.
Yeah, Liz Ryan is the founder and CEO at the Human Workplace. She's also a LinkedIn influencer and author of the Reinvention Roadmap. Liz, welcome back to the show. How have you been?
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I think I said to you before the show, last time we spoke, I didn't have a baby. So that's new.
Baby! So amazing.
Yeah. And
What's the biggest thing? What's the biggest thing that
the biggest
was a
shift?
shock or,
No sleep. Paranoid parent. Just is the baby still alive? Going in there every sort of 10 minutes, just making sure that, you know, she's still breathing. Like, I'm so even now, my wife's like, Chris, she's fine. She's got a cold. She'll get over it.
I know.
So stop worrying about it. I'm like sitting there on the baby monitor, I've got like an app on my phone. And I'm like secretly looking at it in the middle of the night. And my wife's like, stop looking at the baby monitor. She's okay. Go to sleep. And I'm like, I think
it's hard.
I think
it's hard.
And then the other thing is just more of the shift in personal, my own personal why and sense of purpose. Is shift.
Yes.
It was always about Chris and my goals and my objectives and, you know, and all the work. Now it's about Robin. It's about my wife.
Yes.
It's about how do I create a work-life blend, not balance. I don't think there's such a thing, that works for both family and building a company as a co-founder, which is a tough thing to do at the same time. But I wouldn't change anything for the world. So it's been amazing.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
Well, Liz, for the people that aren't aware of your work, the few people on LinkedIn, because I think half of them follow you by now, tell us a little bit more about yourself personally and your sort of journey in the work that you do.
Well, Chris, I've been an HR person since 5 years before you were born, bruh. And yes, and I got into HR and I absolutely loved it. I didn't start at HR. I did 5 years of other kinds of operations, customer support, and stuff like that. My background is opera. I'm an opera singer. My training.
Give us a few notes, Liz. Give us a few notes. Come on.
Okay.
I'm sorry to everyone's headphones. Everyone's inside that right now.
And so I got into HR and I immediately saw two things. When I was 24, I saw two things. One was that this position, this role, this function has so much opportunity, so much possibility to impact an organization so powerfully, not just to make the company more profitable, although that's really important, but lives, people's lives. I saw that right away because folks were coming in to talk to me, help me solve this issue, talk this through with me, help me brainstorm, executives, entry-level people, every single person, and then me out in the departments walking around. Hey, did your sister have her baby? How are you doing? How's it going with that issue? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? How can I help you? So that was the first thing I saw, that HR could be incredibly impactful and powerful in an organization and just in a community, which in a workplace is, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing, Chris, that I saw simultaneously is that the way we structure HR and the way we tend to do it traditionally is the opposite of that. Rules and policies and performance evaluations, and you're on probation, and here's your pay increment. It's all very formal and boxy and actually anti-human. And one of the first things I thought about when I started as an HR person back in the day when it was Madonna versus Cyndi Lauper for the airwaves, right? Was I'm going to work on this later when I have time. Into this, became an HR executive VP, all this kind of stuff, Fortune 500 company, writing, speaking, and finally came around to, in 2012, launching the Human Workplace movement and the company to reinvent work for people. So that's what I do now, Chris.
And what was that sort of defining moment, Liz, where you was like, I'm doing it now? Because I know, like, I'm sure like me, you were thinking about it for years. Oh, for me, it was like 2 or 3 years.
Years.
Build up, right?
There were so many, but I'll tell you just one. I went to speak at a company, and I do this a lot, hop on a plane, go to some company and be like, sing opera, get excited, get people thinking about their possibilities, try to rev them up, real evangelical. And a person came up to me at the end of the talk and they said, you're amazing. I love you. I'm sure you got paid well to come out here. You are the pressure release valve. It's actually not a good place to work, but every so often they bring in somebody like you to make us feel better about working here rather than actually fix anything that's broken. And it was like a knife in my heart. Like, am I part of the problem? The pressure release valve. I show up and say, la, 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 isn't it great? And then I leave. That's messed up, Chris. That's And I said, so I have to actually work full time on this issue of reinventing work for people, humanizing HR, leadership practices, the way people get jobs, the whole thing, that actually the system of work that has this sort of baked in imbalance, power inequality, where employers are up and employees are down. It's not healthy. It's not whole. It's not good for people. It's not good for companies. It's not good for shareholders or customers. And we got to talk about that.
So in this sort of new world of work, we've seen it shift so much, right? Since we last spoke as well. What is the role of HR in this new sort of millennium workplace, in your opinion?
Thank you for that question, Christopher. HR, to me, is the ministry of culture. It's the place where we are focused specifically. Everybody has a role in a culture, obviously, and in health, and in building community and trust at work, which is my big thing. Trust, trust, trust over fear. Most of the traditional management systems, from the way we hire to performance evaluation to the way we do pay, the way we do discipline and all this crap, is based on fear. We're going to keep people afraid of what happens if they do something wrong, right? So we're trying to replace that with trust and say, if you trust people, you hire people you trust. Leadership, as you and I were talking about earlier, is free. Supervision is expensive and it slows everything down, watching people like a hawk. So the role of HR in this new millennium workplace is to build trust. And that means telling the truth about sticky topics they might not want to address, telling the truth up to your boss. HR done well, Chris, as you know, is scary. It can be scary.
Exactly.
It can be scary.
No one talks about that part either, unfortunately.
They don't talk about it. And when I was an HR person from a young age, I'm lying in bed at night like, oh my God, I could get fired tomorrow when I tell my boss or his boss or whatever, something they don't want to hear. And I had to do it anyway, because there's a lot worse things, as you know, Chris, than getting fired. And it works. It's the only way, in fact, to build your muscles, to build your strength, is to speak your truth and take risks outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. And you're also doing a disservice to your employees by not doing that, right?
It's literally the role. And I am deluged with mail every day from HR people who say, I would love to bring a human voice into my workplace. I would love to use your principles. I would love to do this stuff, but I need the job. Baby doll, we all need work, but you don't need this job. What would happen if you lost this? First of all, you're very unlikely to get fired because you told an executive one thing they didn't want to hear. They'll get mad, but they're probably very unlikely in the moment to say you're sacked, right? But even if that happened, what an unbelievable learning experience it would be. And getting through the next 3 months of poverty, what an unbelievable learning experience that would be. And I realize I'm going to be ticking people off right now by saying this, but it's literally the truth. There is no way to do HR well without speaking your truth, regardless of the consequences.
And some of the most successful leaders that I've interviewed, they've told me that. Some of them offline, some of them on the show as well. And many of them say to me, you almost have to be willing. You have to be willing to lose your job.
Remember walking up the steps to my CEO's office, my heart like pounding, boom, 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 thinking, oh my God, am I getting fired right now? No, because here's the thing. When you build credibility with an executive in advance, which is your job, because you can't be an advisor unless you're credible, right? When you build the credibility and then you have to give them a harsh truth, like that's a really bad idea. Do not carry out that idea. I don't support it. And I don't have any data except my gut, which evolved for millennia, just like yours did, to do the right thing. When you stand up for that, that's how you actually become more credible. People say, what kind of data should I bring my executive team to convince them of this point of view? There is no data. There is no data that is going to convince somebody to change a strongly held belief that they have. It's going to be the force of your personal conviction.
I'm sure many people listening are either in a position or have been in a position like that before. What advice would you give to them?
I would encourage people, there are times when you need to react out of emotion and make that stand and do the Braveheart speech do all the speeches, and then go with your gut and just do it. Okay. But most of the time it's going to benefit you to back up and create an argument that's likely to appeal to your audience, right? So that is responding to their pain point. What's their pain? Just like I teach job seekers, right? What is the hiring manager's pain? You have to look at the world through their eyes. What is their pain? So what we've taught job seekers for a whole generation or 2 or 3 to say, I have these skills and I have this certification. Who gets a shizzle?
Yeah,
why would anybody care?
What can you solve for me? Yeah.
What can you do for me? I can only imagine that given your company's recent history of doing blah, 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 perhaps you're in the mode of looking for blah, blah, blah. You bring it from their perspective. So when you're selling a tough idea or a controversial idea up the stream to the CEO or the executive team, it's the exact same thing. You guys are always talking about this problem. You've got a motivation problem. Here's why. Motivation problem in a company, Chris, as you know, is a blockage in the energy flow. People want to race down the track. They want to be out with you skateboarding, right? They want to feel the air. They want to be moving. When they can't move, that's not them. That's you. That's the leadership. There's something in their way. Red tape, bureaucracy, fear, political problems at the top. None of this stuff is complicated, but it's really hard to talk about. We don't want to talk about it. So we don't.
Yeah. And in many cases, that just causes more and more and more problems.
Just spirals. Almost everybody, by the time they're 35, 40, has worked for a company that started out great and it spiraled down. And all that happened was people were not able to tell the truth about it. If somebody had spoken up, they might have been able to stem that tide, but people don't. We can't blame them. They leave. They just leave. Why should I stay and fight? Here in the United States, we have something y'all don't have. We have employment at will. You know about it?
No.
Employment at will is huge, Chris. It comes from the 1870s. In the United States, the robber barons, they're called the Carnegies and the Astors and all these rich dudes, that started Standard Oil and the big companies way back after the Civil War when the United States became like an industrial superpower. They went to Congress, which they basically owned, let's be honest. Employees have contracts, and that doesn't work for us. We do not want employees to have contracts that require us to keep them employed or to do other things we may not want to do. So ever since then, we've had a doctrine in the United States called employment at will. It means we can fire your ass at any moment for any reason. There are no contracts. That's why labor unions formed, because people are like, are you kidding me? Right now in the United States, most working people, Chris, they could say, I am a Tottenham Hotspurs fan and you are a, Manchester United fan and you're fired. That's it. There's no reason needed. And that's one reason working people in the United States are so freaked out all the time about their boss and the relationship with their boss. But that is not healthy. It's not healthy for business, not healthy for customers, certainly not for working people and their families. And so that's, a big issue that I talk about all the time because it's obviously right in the center of what's broken.
What are some of the other changes that you've seen, big changes that you've seen in HR, Liz? Obviously, it's transformed so dramatically over the last sort of
so dramatically. HR has split, basically. There are 2 ways to do HR and a lot of intersection, which is a shame. One way is the fear-based way that I was taught, that most people were taught, and that is policy, rules, standardization, uniformity. We make no exceptions. It's ridiculous because we obviously make exceptions every day. CEO gets paid more than the person in the middle, right? So everything is very specific and customized to the person in the role, but we love to say everyone gets treated the same. It's not true, but we say it because it's a way of keeping out discussion, keeping out controversy, keeping out that human interaction that actually makes HR vibrant and fertile and warm and wonderful. So one of the changes is that people are opting over to the other side and saying, I'm going to do HR in my company. If I'm an entry-level HR person, if I'm a director of HR, I'm going to do it in a human way. I'm going to make decisions based on what's best for people, individual employees, candidates, not what's going to hew to the policy and conform to the policy that was written maybe 15 years ago in a completely different context. HR really needs to be reinvented from the ground up. The way we do recruiting is very anti-people. It's horrible. I don't know how it is in the UK. In the US, it's not good. People are very frustrated. You go 5, 10, 7 interviews, you get ghosted at the end. It's rude. HR people say, we don't have the resources to take care of candidates. I'd like to be more sympathetic than I am. That's finding the voice again and arguing for, I cannot do an effective job recruiting for you, Mr. or Ms. CEO, unless I get the resources to allow me to do it appropriately. So it's just for a lot of people to find their voices and really find their power. And what I say to them is, I understand all the constraints you're up against. I was too. I understand all the burdens and the hurdles and the obstacles, but it's your lifetime. It's your integrity. You have this one chance, as far as we know, to go around the sun 70, 80, 90 times. This is it, man. It's now. This is your performance out here in life. This is your art.
Well, that leads us quite nicely onto the question. Then you're talking about the 5 things HR people need to be really good.
What
is the human workplace?
Okay. Yeah. 5 things human resources people need to be able to do right now. Didn't always need this stuff before, but they need it now. Number 1, the ability to tell the truth. You think, I can tell the truth? Yes, you can tell the truth to your sister. Tell the truth to your boss. Can you tell that awkward, icky truth to your boss? Marjorie, at times you have a tendency in the staff meetings to cut people off, and it gives the impression that you're putting them down and what they're saying isn't valuable. Get those words out. Before, if it's really hard to say, write them down first and say them in your mind and get used to it a little while. We have to find our voice and tell the truth. It's literally the only thing that is going to grow that muscle. Your vocal cords are muscles, just like every other muscle in your body, and we need to grow them. Number 2 is take the human view, man. It isn't going to be human in your workplace until you take the human view over the mechanical view. That's a critical factor for HR people. Third one is you have to be personally credible. A lot of HR people struggle with this. I have the certifications. I should be credible. You think these business leaders give a rat's behind whether you have certifications or not? HR certifications, they don't care. That doesn't make you more valuable in their eyes or more credible. You are credible when you're an ally and an advisor to them. In the mafia, Chris, they call it the consigliere. And I always said, as an HR leader, I'm the consigliere to the CEO. I'm whispering in his ear, don't do that. Do that. Right? Yeah. That's what an effective HR leader is. They're guiding and advising. And that's how you become credible and you become really that trusted advisor. Number 4, you got to understand your business. You can't do anything in HR unless you understand how your business makes money. And then the 5th one is you want to be strategic. Every HR person says, I want that seat at the table. They want to be strategic, be tactical. Be tactical to be strategic. You came, Chris, doing it all, right? You didn't walk in to your first business job with an MBA and say, I'm running things. You started at the bottom doing gut level, street level stuff and figuring out how it all fits together. That's me too. You want to be strategic, be tactical. Be really good. Do not tell me I'm a strategic HR person and I never deal with employees one-on-one. No, then you have no credibility with me or them. Get out there, make sure they get paid appropriately, make sure their vacation time request goes through, become credible at the ground level strategically, tactically. That's how you become strategic.
Fantastic. I'm sure everyone was writing those 5 things down on their notepad. That's all. I had a question from Gary Wilson. Liz,
yeah, Gary.
He asked, I'm sure many people have been in this case, how do you influence a toxic CEO?
You become a trusted advisor to them. That is other than leave, the only way to influence a toxic CEO is to have them trust you enough to ask for your opinion and want it and need it and rely on it. And part of this truth telling I'm mentioning is a lot of HR people know the phenomenon where the CEO will ask your opinion and then ignore it. Right? Frustrating.
Yeah.
Ask for it, ignore it, and not even tell you they ignored it, right? You figured out by osmosis. So you say your CEO, Gary, let's call your CEO Chuck. You say, so Chuck, listen, you need some help with this issue. The sales VP is not necessarily working out, and you got this issue with inventory. You got the bank on your case, blah, blah, blah. I can help you with all that stuff. And I also have some coaching for you. You game? Are you game, Chuck, to get my help as well as some coaching for me? Because that's the deal. That's the transaction. That's how it works. I will advise you to the extent that I can actually coach you, because otherwise my advice is garbage. And you have to find those words and say that. I've done it in airport lounges. I've done it in the back of taxi cabs. I've done it on planes. I've done it in the office. I've done it in the rain. You have to find the words. If you don't, it's not that it hurts them. If you stay silent, it hurts you. It hurts you. The way we all are hurt when we silence our trusty gut and say, well, I better not because I have my performance review coming up. No, screw that. This performance review is nothing in the scheme of your life. Step into your power. And
are there situations where sometimes you just got to walk away?
I am very sympathetic to HR people who say, I'm on my second or third employer. I thought these guys were going to be more malleable. I thought they were going to be more open-minded. I feel like I have to leave again. You might have to leave again. You might have to start your own consulting business. Why are there so many HR consultants around?
There's a lot, yeah.
This is why.
I mentioned that because I spoke to many HR directors, CHROs that have told me they just had to walk away. They've tried doing what you've just recommended, and they got to the point where it just became toxic for themselves. The sleepless nights were even more apparent, and it was actually taken a toll on their health. Their mental, physical health was taking a hit because it was
Chris.
Literally, yes, exactly, literally, and they had to walk away for their own, even though it was a higher paying salary. They got a mortgage to pay. They got family. It was, it was worth walking away. And no one's pretending that's easy, guys. And
it's not easy.
I quit my job.
Nothing in life is easy. Nothing heroic is easy, right? Okay, I was so out of it. Mine was. Before I was able to walk away, I had to be carried out of my house on a stretcher, Chris, on a stretcher by like two guys, like picking up the stretcher, taking me to the hospital. And then I was like, wait, maybe my job isn't working out.
Really? That actually happened?
That happened to me.
Wow.
In 2000, I was in my house. I had chronic back problems. I have no back problems now, Chris. Weird, right? None.
Yeah.
I was carried out of my house. And it was very nice. It was a very reflective, little weird, one of these circular moments, because one of the guys carrying the stretcher says to me, is your name Liz? I said, yes. He goes, I used to work for you at a company called US Robotics.
No way.
You were running HR and I was one of the safety guys. And I was like, oh my God, hi. He's carrying the stretcher. He says, I'm going to tell the emergency room people to take really good care of you. You were a great boss. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And it reminded me, that's how work should be, that we care about each other. That's how it should be. And when it isn't that way, sometimes you just have to leave for your own sake and actually to benefit all of us. You have to walk away and not be part of something that's that broken.
Nancy Alexander had a question. She said, what about favoritism and nepotism? How do you speak truthfully when these things are going on?
It's a great question. It's the exact same thing. People will trust your advice and they will act on your advice to the extent that they find you personally credible. That's a personal thing. It has nothing to do with degrees or certifications or years of experience. It is a relationship thing. HR to me is 99% a relationship job. I don't care what your role is, it's relationships around you. Otherwise, they should automate it. They should outsource it, automate it. If it's not relationships, why is it HR, right? We can always outsource the data crunching and all that stuff. So you become credible to the people that you want to advise. For example, a manager who's playing favorites or doing nepotism and hiring their nephew and all this kind of stuff, right? You get to the place where you can advise them as an equal, which is a place of vulnerability for them. So it takes time to get there, right? And if you're afraid to step into your power, which most of us are, it's going to take a lot longer. Some people would simply say, there's too much favoritism, there's too much nepotism, I'm out of here. That's a valid choice, but how long can you run? Eventually you got to turn and face whatever is challenging you. And so you say, you know what, John, the manager, there's a lot of concern, I share it, that there's too much favoritism and that there are 2 or 3 employees that you dote on and you ignore everybody else. And I'm not sure you can see that. I want to hold up a mirror and have you really get that so you can see how much damage it's doing to you and your credibility and your leadership ability and maybe help you step out of that.
Yeah, I had an example of that in my previous role. I don't know how relevant it is, but I'll share the story anyway. The company that purchased our business, the private equity, the owner of that business, he put his son in our organization. So he hired his son, no experience at all, into a senior role. Just straight in, and everyone, it was destroyed the culture of my team. Because everyone's been working so hard to get to that role, and this guy's just been put in place because he's come from a rich family who just bought our company, right?
And he doesn't know it. He thinks he's God's gift, right?
Yeah, he did. He did as well.
Yeah.
And he was working under, I was still his boss at that point, and he was working under different managers. And essentially, it got to the point where he was passed around to over 7 different teams because everyone was afraid to fire him. So everyone was like, how do we fire the kid whose dad owns the company?
Exactly.
Even our human resources director would not allow us to hire him. And then it finally came to my team, right? So he came onto my team, right? And I was not happy about it, but I didn't really have a choice at the time. And I could see immediately the impact it had on the morale of my team. This guy was in a senior role, getting paid more than them, wearing his £3,000 suits to work, and what he would do, which is really terrible, is that we would have a vision board where everyone in my team would put their vision of what they want to achieve, or it's a house or a holiday, and we'd come in and we'd all work together. How do we achieve each other's dreams, right? And mine was like a house at the time. And what he would do, he would go and buy the things on the board, just casually, just go and buy. How awful is that, right? So yeah, I know exactly. Long story short, I got so frustrated that I basically walked into my HR director's office and said, "I'm firing him today. I'll call his dad and let him know that I'm the one who fired him. And if you want to fire me, that's fine. I'm cool. I'm cool with that." But to be honest, I was terrified, and I actually got an email from his dad thanking me a few months later because he's like, his son needed that lesson to show the
emperor's new clothes, Christopher. Nobody wants to say the emperor has no clothes, and you did it. Now, right there, that's a beautiful story, and that's part of your journey to where you are right now. Thank God for the kid and the wimpy dad, because they help propel you to the next step in your power. And this is what people don't see about adversity. Look, adversity sucks. We all hate it. We don't want to bring it in. We're like, keep it away. I want things to be smooth and easy. But adversity is what helps us grow. We talk about growth. I want to grow as a person, as a professional. Overcome an obstacle. Obviously, overcome an obstacle that you wish had never shown up in your path, but it did. You overcome it, and your muscles get stronger.
Yeah.
And it turns out that, I'm sure by now, there's very few people, if any, that you are now afraid of. Whereas at one point, there were probably a lot of people you were afraid of.
Yeah. And one thing I would add to that, a few years later, I saw that same, this is only 2 years ago, I saw that same individual who I fired, and he thanked me. He was with his sales team. So he was with his sales team in the morning on the way to work, and I saw him and I was like, oh my God, like trying to avoid all eye contact, trying to walk along the other side of the road. And I saw him and he was like, how are you? I was like, really? And he was really happy. He was like, thanks so much. He was like, since then I've, worked in different companies, kind of, built up my way, and it was hard, but it actually meant a lot to him. And I was like, oh wow, actually,
I love it.
He needed that too, because at that point he had never faced adversity in his life. So that was quite an interesting one. And so going back to the credibility part, Liz, how else can we build credibility in HR?
If you think about, if you sit down with a piece of paper or a device and you say, what is suboptimal? What is not working? HR or in your organization, in the departments, whatever, in the operations, you're going to probably come up with some functional, operational things. This system isn't sufficient to our needs anymore, or we need to put more attention on this, some business issues, right? And then you're going to come up with some interpersonal issues. They're very hard to talk about. So what we tend to do is pretend they don't exist, right? So-and-so does not talk to so-and-so, and it sends ripples through the whole organization. Our CEO has a blind spot where he can't see this thing that he does that absolutely crushes morale. So there's going to be these people issues. You make a list of them for yourself first, and you get used to them, and you sort of think about them, and you say, if I could snap my fingers and change 5 things, what would they be? These are the 5. And now your intention is on solving those little by little, drip by drip. This is drip marketing, right? Therapy, social work, counseling, they're all drip processes, right? You don't say to somebody, you got to change your life. It's all screwed up. You work step by step.
Yeah.
And you work with them where they are. And that's how HR people build credibility. This idea that I will go get data. I will go get a consultant. I did that, Chris. I was a young HR person in a high-tech company. It was about to go public, and we're going to be a public company, and I'm HR, yay. And I'm bringing in consultants. Well, guess who has the credibility then, Chris? The consultant. How do I build my own credibility? Say the truth about sticky things. I'll tell you one story about that. Our company was going to have layoffs. I was an idiot. I did not realize, why would we have layoffs? The company is going crazy. It's growing through the roof. They were trying to shape up the books to sell the company.
Ah, of course. And then the easiest way to do that.
There's going to be layoffs, but I'm like I'm an idiot. I'm like, I can't figure this out. So I'm like, oh my God, layoffs. This is terrible. And it is, obviously. It's horrible. It's the worst thing that ever happened to me professionally, was having to administer this layoff. So we sit there and we make the lists of these poor people that have to be put out of a job, and we figure out all the operational aspects, who's going to talk to whom. And I'm trying to make everything as soft and as human as it can be. Outplacement, help them with their resume, recommendations, all this. And then they pass around at this executive meeting about the upcoming layoffs. They pass around a press release, draft of a press release that's going to go out to the newspapers, right? We're having layoffs. Doing some house cleaning and, tightening up our operation by basically all but saying getting rid of the dead wood or the weak performers in the press release. I said,
no way.
Idiotic. That's idiotic, and it's not true. It's not terrible. True, and it's stupid, and it's not credible, because who waits like years and then all of a sudden one day gets rid of all that? Makes no sense, and I'm not going to put my name on it. And they said, no, this will not hurt the employees who are laid off in terms of getting another job, because we're going to give each one of them a personal letter of recommendation. I said, really? You think they're going to carry that letter around to the grocery store to show their friends and the church and the preschool and like, no, I wasn't a weak performer. Look at my letter. That's idiotic. That makes no sense. I'm HR. I stand for the integrity of the way we treat our employees. We're not doing this. And I was outvoted. They said I was overreacting, Chris. Every HR person has heard that a million times. You're overreacting. You're not being businesslike, all that. I was beside myself, ready to quit, all that. I said, the best thing for me to do right now is get out of here, because I'm shaming these guys, and people don't like to be shamed, and they don't like to be shamed in the presence of the person who's shaming them. So I bailed. It was like 4 p.m. I just left. I went home, tried to put it out of my mind. Just like your jujitsu, right?
Yeah.
It was never discussed again. When the press release came out a couple of days later, it didn't say anything about the criteria or the reason for laying people off. It was just, it's whatever. It's economic, it's whatever. But they abandoned the idea, but I had to be gone so that I wasn't there like, what's wrong with you people? Do you have any ethics at all? And sometimes you have to give people space to rise up to their potential instead of being on them, like this.
Yeah. I have a question from Stephen Rice, and he asks, how do you get employers to look past qualifications alone as a measure of quality and take risk on aptitude and ability?
I'm gonna be really rapid fire here, because I teach a radically different way to find a job. It's in the book. You mentioned Reinvention Roadmap. It's on Amazon. It's on all the bookstores. Reinvention Roadmap. I teach something radically different. I mentioned I was an HR VP 1,000 years. Okay. Everybody in life is short of something. They are short of acknowledgement and recognition. Your hiring manager, the person that is in a position to hire you for a job, is just as deprived of acknowledgement and recognition as the rest of us are. So I teach people not to fill out online job applications. Ignore that. Don't do it. Don't do it. Find your own hiring manager inside the company. It's easy with LinkedIn now. And
it shows you who's posted it on LinkedIn. You can message them directly. Yeah.
And you speak to them about something that is not, I have these qualifications. They're deluge. Think of driving into a snowstorm and all the snow is hitting your windscreen and you're just overwhelmed with snowflakes, right? That's how they are getting all these resumes and applications in. They cannot focus on you. You have not made yourself relevant to them. The way you become relevant to someone is by talking about what they care about, which is them. So you send something that I invented and we teach at Human Workplace, Chris, called a pain letter. You're going to send them a pain letter in an envelope through the mail, through the postal service, because they're not used to paper mail hitting their desk.
Yeah, you're the only one who's sending them letters. Put it that way.
You're the only one.
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant letter because it says, "Dear Jack, I was lucky enough to catch the last 10 minutes of your podcast with Chris Rainey, and I love what you said about da-da-da-da. I couldn't agree more." Guess, did their wife, when they went home, did Jack's wife say, "Great job on the podcast"? No, she didn't even know about it. Get acknowledgement from their coworkers, from their boss? No. So you show up out of the blue sky saying, "Hey, great job, Jack. I agree with you." It's like, oh, that gives them enough of an aperture in their otherwise closed and overloaded brain to read the rest of this pain letter. And it says, "I can only imagine that based on your new distribution deal with such and such, that you guys must be up against blah, blah, blah." Because you've read their website, you've read the news reports, you've read their press releases, you know what's going on with them, and you can extrapolate what their likely pain might. Reason this letter is called a pain letter is you're talking about their pain. It's just what salespeople do. It's what you did when you were selling all those. And so then you don't praise yourself. "Oh, I have this, I have that." That's going to immediately shut them down. They don't give a shizzle about you yet. But you say, "I was in a similar situation." You name a similar pain story. We call them dragon slaying stories, but this is, invented 10, 12 years ago. "I was in a situation over at Wiggly Devices where we had to blah, 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 and we pulled it out and we were able to get it done." You're not bragging. "I won an award." No one cares. But you say, we got it done and it was a great thing. Then attached to that, stapled to it, is your resume, your CV. It's right there. And it's written in a human voice. It's called a human voiced resume. And it goes together with your pain letter in an envelope. And they open it. "Oh, what's this? Someone took the time to look me up and find out what I'm into and what I'm doing. I'm going to interview this person." And the reason I know about this, Chris, I was an HR person, and managers would walk into my office. "Look at this letter this guy wrote me." Now that's impressive. Before LinkedIn, they were able to find a hiring manager. And they always wanted to interview the candidate, and who could blame them? And my take was, hell yeah.
I would want to interview them at the very least. I'm like, wow, they took the time to do that. Or when I get a salesperson, when I get a salespeople call me to pitch me of why they should work for me, and it's a sales role, I'm like, yes, you've just cold called me and pitched me on why you should be, my head of sales. I'm like, okay,
that's it, Chris. The gentleman who does the transcriptions for our podcasts and webinars and all the verbal stuff, right, is Hyderabad, India. And he called me on the phone one day years ago when I used to pick up our phone. And he said, "Hey, Liz, I've been looking at your webinars, and I have no idea how you're getting these things transcribed, but you do a lot of webinars. It must be a hassle. I was thinking maybe I could help you with that." What am I going to say other than yes? Yeah. Today, can we do that? He saw pain, he spotted pain, and he responded to it. And he just called me and said, "Wasn't sure, don't mean to presume, but if you need help with this, I'd love to help." And he's been transcribing our webinars ever since, like 15 years.
Amazing. Yeah.
You can't be passive. You can't sit there and respond one click to job ads. It goes nowhere. That's just broken. I always say, if they don't like your pain letter, they're going to ignore it. They're not going to come to your house and slash your tires. So you're fine. Just do it. You can send out like 3 of these a day, 4 a day if you're not working, and you're going to get not only a higher percentage of responses, but a better quality of response, because you're hearing from the hiring manager who could hire you. You can talk about pain like a consultant. This is a consulting approach. Instead of HR sending you 15 tests to take and barriers and garbage and nonsense that does not move your job search forward.
I completely agree. And also what I said to my friend was, would you rather have no response at all, which is what you're currently getting, or a no from someone who can actually make a decision?
Exactly.
So at least you're one step closer to a yes, right? As opposed to not hearing anything at all. So.
And if you want to get conspiracy minded, Chris, why don't we teach this stuff? Why do we teach people to grovel down on the ground and crawl through the mud to get it?
Yeah.
Why? It's part of what's broken. You are a seeker. That's the lowliest form of life there is. How dare you think that you have something to say? It's really toxic. It's just in the mindset.
And to your point, we were speaking about the whole university thing before
Yes.
the show, right?
Yes.
And if I didn't have my background in sales, I wouldn't have thought, let me directly pitch people for the job that I desire. Not everyone
Right.
has that ability and skill set. And I was like, I wish that's something I was taught. When I was first looking for my job, if I would have understood what you just mentioned and the solution that you offer, I would have jumped all over that, because at least I'm in control. These are the sort of core skills that I think we should be
core skills.
teaching.
Well,
Yeah.
I have 5 kids. The youngest one is 16 and the oldest one is 25. So they're all basically through the school system. And if I didn't learn as a kid myself going through the school system how oriented the school system is to teaching people to bow to authority and shut up and do what's expected of them, I really know that as a parent, because it has not changed in those years. It hasn't changed. It's still, you're going to get in trouble. You have to do this. I remember getting into a kind of little heated discussion with my kids, like 4th grade math teacher, and she doesn't finish the worksheet. He does half the problems, and then he starts like talking and staring out the window. And I said, he's a very distractible kid, but he gets the concept. He understands it. That's why he gets bored. That's why he stops doing the problems. She says, well, there's a pedagogical reason why there's a certain number of problems on the page. I said, please, it's how many fit. How many fit on the page? Let's be honest. And the school system does teach us to bow down to authority and do what we're told. Some people feel that school is just preparation for people to go to work and sit at desks and do what they're told. And so, yes, it's a crime that we don't teach kids how to feel their power, how to do the interpersonal stuff you and I have been talking about, how to build their credibility, how to speak their truth, how to taste risk. We don't teach any of that in traditional education, and it hurts us. We get out in the job market and we think, oh, these guys are bigger and more powerful than I am. They're not. That's my message. You have influence you're not using because you don't know you have it. And the only way to know you have it is to use it. And that's how you get more.
And you realize, as I said, it took me 8 years in my role to finally speak my voice in someone. And when I finally did, it was like a snowball effect. I was like, wow, and so much. And it wasn't as scary as I thought it was in many cases.
Yes.
And that conversation, yes, it was tough, but the positive that came out on the other side was so worth it. And the relationships with my team flourished because I was open and honest with them. And then they in turn became more open and honest with me. And told me, Chris, I would like you to manage me this way. And can you not do that, Chris? Or
exactly.
And it's
exactly. It's awesome, Chris. At Human Workplace, you want to follow on Twitter. It's at Human Workplace, right? You can find me on LinkedIn. It's easy. Come over and check us out at humanworkplace.com. And
what about the podcast? What's the podcast called?
Oh, podcast. Thank you. Podcast is on YouTube and iTunes. It's called The Truth About Work, yo. The Truth About Work.
Yeah, and as you can tell, Liz doesn't hold back. You might even get some singing as well over there, guys.
Oh yes,
we're trying to convince Liz to do a singing intro.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We'll leave it there for today, Liz. It's been so good to have back on again. It's always fun when we have a conversation. So thank you so much for that. Apart from that, everyone, in terms of the best way to reach out, you mentioned a website. Is it too many messages on LinkedIn to send you LinkedIn messages?
No, my LinkedIn inbox is shut down now. It was spam fest. Support at humanworkplace.com.
Okay,
I'm glad. At humanworkplace.com.
Because I know everyone here is probably sending you LinkedIn messages, so I wanted to warn them in advance that you have 2.4 million followers. So I'm sure
3.2.
Oh, 3.2. I've loaded it down now. So was that? I think since last time we spoke, you got an extra million LinkedIn followers. I need to step my game up, Liz. Well, look, thanks so much. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Chris. Thank you for your questions, guys, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Bye.